pick up, first of all, if I may, please, with what we were hearing from the Home Secretary, this morning, saying more than doubling the number of interpreters, their families and ancillary staff that will be able to come to the UK. You must welcome that.
Yes, I mean, I think we've got a moral obligation to those Afghans who helped us help their country. So I think it's right and proper that we should do what we can for them.
10,000 enough?
I don't know. I mean, I think those are often going to be political judgments. And of course, a lot of it will depend upon the feasibility of who can travel and the pace at which they can travel.
What are you hearing about what's happening on the ground?
Well, at the moment, I think it's very calm. I think we are collaborating with the Taliban on the ground. And that seems to be a very straightforward relationship. They are keeping the streets of Kabul very safe and indeed very calm. They are helping us at the airport. I think we have a worrying problem potentially with worried Afghans trying to get into the airport again. And we saw some very troubling scenes over the weekend. But providing we can keep control around the airport perimeter, there's no reason to suppose that we can't carry on doing what we're doing. There may always be the threat from renegade elements of the Taliban. You know, it's not a homogeneous organisation. It may not have control over all of its people. But at the moment, they're controlling things very effectively. And they're allowing us to do what we need to do.
Helping you in what way? In an appropriate way that we would find acceptable?
Yes, absolutely.
In what way?
So they're keeping the streets calm. They're avoiding public disorder.
They're said to be quite thuggish at some of those checkpoints, firing over people's heads and the like. Well,
I think they've also got challenges with public order. But certainly what we're not getting are reports of them behaving in a sort of medieval way like you might have seen in the past. Now, one has to temper all of this. One has to be very careful. But some of the public pronouncements that we're hearing from the Political Commission, and indeed they are now in Kabul and they are forming a government and they are talking to President Karzai, who I've talked to regularly over the weekend, and President Karzai and Dr. Abdullah will meet with them today. And there's no reason to suppose that they can't come to a sensible solution for how an inclusive government can run the country in the future, recognising that there, of course, will always be elements who may not behave as we would hope they would behave.
There will be a finite time before they want their airport back. Does that mean that inevitably we will have to leave some people behind?
I don't know yet. I think what we have to do is...
It must be your fear.
I think we have to take each day as it comes, and we have to see how it happens. I mean, the Political Commission have made it pretty clear that those Afghans who want to leave Afghanistan, they'll let leave Afghanistan. So let's see how it happens. I don't think they want to become international pariahs again. They want to have a functioning airport. They want to have diplomatic missions inside Kabul that they can talk to. They also recognise that they need humanitarian support. So the important thing at the moment is to maintain engagement with them and to make sure that we don't close out on anything.
But your boss, the Defence Secretary, was moved to tears earlier in the week. You know, it's very well documented, saying that he feels that we will inevitably have to leave people behind.
We don't know yet how that will happen. At the moment, it is all running smoothly. And let's see what the Taliban allow us all to do at the moment. We're going to continue We're going to continue to move as many people as we possibly can, given the circumstances we've got. And yes, of course, you know, we are having to collaborate with them. They now provide the security on the ground in Kabul, and we are going to work with them in order to be able to conduct the evacuation that is now underway.
And how do you feel about collaborating with the enemy when they have carried out such atrocities against UK military personnel over the years?
I think you have to be very careful using the word enemy. I think people need to understand who the Taliban actually are. And of course, what they are a disparate collection of tribespeople. As President Karzai put it to me only yesterday, they're country boys. And the plain fact is that they happen to live by a code of honour and a standard, which has been their standard for many, many years. It's called Pashtun Wali. It has honour at the heart of what they do. They are bound together by a common purpose, which is they don't like corrupt governance. They don't like governance that is self-serving. And they want an Afghanistan that is inclusive for all. So I think rather than talking
about...
Except women. What?
Except women.
Well, again, I think we have to wait and see. I mean, I don't know what they mean.
We can't support the way that they treat women, surely.
Well, I think you have to listen to what they're saying at the moment, and I think you have to listen to the facts on the ground.
They're saying they are definitely, law.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's anything that you and I would approve of particularly.
I'm just clarifying that.
Absolutely, but I do think that they have changed. I think they recognise that over the course of the last 20 years, Afghanistan has evolved. They recognise the fundamental role that women have played in that evolution. And yes, they, at the moment, will undoubtedly say that they want to respect women's rights under Islamic law, and that will be a Sharia law. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't allow them to be involved in government and in education and in medicine and those things that they need them to be involved in. So I think we have to be patient. We have to give them the space to show how they are going to step up to the plate. And whether or not we can work with them will very much depend upon how they treat all Afghans.
Some of your former colleagues, Rory Stewart, Johnny Mercer, all men that have served, Tom Tugendhat, said we shouldn't believe a word that the Taliban says. And more than that, we saw women, very brave women, demonstrating on the streets in Kabul yesterday saying, we don't want the Taliban here.
And I respect all of that. All I'm simply saying is that let's see how this evolves, because it may well be that we're surprised by it. Yes, we should do it very carefully. Yes, we should be fundamentally suspicious because, of course, we know where they came from. And we've also seen behaviour by different elements of the Taliban, which we absolutely wouldn't condone. And indeed, it has been brutal in many ways in other parts of Afghanistan. But we should give them the space at the moment to demonstrate whether or not they're going to govern differently.
OK, so what does that space look like? How long do we need to wait to see whether they've changed? How many women need to be raped? How many girls need to be married off at the age of 12? How many women need to be told that they can't be educated past university level?
None of that is appropriate, of course. It's all that would be beyond the pale. But I think, again, I would ask you to show the evidence of where that's happening in Kabul at the moment.
Yeah, but what my question is how long do we need to wait? How many women need to be raped or murdered or beaten because they go out
I come
when they're not
come back
supposed
to you. Show us the evidence of that actually happening on the ground at the moment.
So how many is acceptable? One?
None is acceptable.
OK, just to clarify on that. Let me ask you about an article that you wrote in The Times. I'm sure you've been asked about it already this morning on the 5th of August. Just over 10 days ago, saying that it was too soon to write off the Afghan security forces.
I think that you have to go back a bit. First of all, we need to be very clear that the Afghan security forces fought very bravely from 2014, when they effectively took over the combat operations in Afghanistan, until this year. I think you also need to recognise that come the 4th of July, they lost all of their American support that they'd become accustomed to, and particularly they lost the air power. Now, that was a very shattering moment in terms of their morale. And we as military people talk about fighting power as to how an army fights or armed forces fight. And, of course, that's about the conceptual, the physical, and fundamentally about the moral. And, of course, I think what happened from the 4th of July onwards was their morale was shattered. And, of course, they were up against an opponent who was very able in the information warfare space and was able very fundamentally to demonstrate that it had the momentum. And I think that as a consequence of all of that, it collapsed. And we've seen that many times in history. You know, if you look back to 1942, the way our army in Burma
particularly,
collapsed.
if we may. I mean, you're talking about the 4th of July. You wrote this just 10 days ago, saying that we shouldn't write them off. Is that because our intelligence let us down?
No, not at all. What I was saying was absolutely to try and support them in their fight. Because if we all talked them down, that, of course, would undermine their morale. And fundamentally, what we needed to be doing was to try and make them feel confident, to try and make them feel unified, and to try and make them fight for what they believed in.
Look how that worked out.
Indeed, but you know, at the end of the day, we had to talk about that to give them the confidence to do that. If we had been talking about running them down, about how useless they were and how they couldn't fight, then obviously that would have brought it on even quicker than what occurred. What we needed to be doing at the time was trying to give them the confidence to be able to fight.
So we were relying on a pep talk to try to save...
On the contrary, morale is about leadership. Morale is about giving people confidence to fight.
Why did they not believe in that confidence from us and from the United States?
Well, what I'm saying is that they, of course, were led by their own chain of command. And clearly that chain of command, as we now know, broke down. They didn't believe in that chain of command. They were up against a very effective opponent who had the momentum behind them. And, of course, when you are living in the country and your families are living in the country, you know, unless you hold together...
Fearful, of course, I totally get
and I think that,
and does
you know,
that mean
what the
that we have a
cohesion
responsibility to go back now to try to support them and to look after these people who relied on us?
Sorry,
for so
I missed
long?
the first part of the question.
The point of my question, I'm sorry to interrupt, we're almost out of time, is to say, does an allied force need to return to Afghanistan at some stage in some numbers?
Not necessarily. Let's hold our nerve. Let's be patient. Let's see how things evolve. And let's recognise that if, of course, the threat from terrorism re-emerges in Afghanistan, then we may have to think again. But at the moment, let's hold our nerve.
And what about those soldiers, of many I've spoken to over the last few days, who say the last 2 decades was in vain?
Look, not a day goes by when I don't think of the people who died under my command in Afghanistan. Not a day goes by when I don't think about those Afghans who've worked alongside me to try and make their country a better place. That's what I think about. And of course, I sympathise, I empathise with everybody who's lived and fought in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. And I think we have done a lot to improve Afghanistan. And I think we can hold our heads up high as military people for what we've done on the ground, because we've never been defeated tactically on the ground. And we have fought and died alongside each other. And we've done it in a thoroughly brave fashion.
But half the population of Afghanistan is below the age of 18. We shouldn't rule out going back to support those people if necessary.
Perhaps not, but those are decisions that we need to take at a much higher level than me. All I'm simply saying...
Pretty high levels.
No, I don't think so, because those are political decisions. I'm the head of the military and I provide military advice. Those are political judgments. The bottom line is that what is more interesting, I think, about the over 50% of Afghans who are under 18 is, of course, they've never lived under the Taliban.
Of course.
And what will be interesting is whether or not the Taliban respect the fact that those are essentially the future of their country and they want to live in a different way. And that's where I think we have to give the people of Afghanistan hope.
And if they don't?
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Bottom line...
There's a lot of waiting to see, isn't there?
Well, of course there is. You know, come on. You know, the things are unfolding incredibly quickly. Nobody could have predicted quite what's happened now. It's very easy to be wise with the benefit of hindsight, which is why it is important to be steady, to hold your nerve, to provide a bit of patience, to stay engaged and to be prepared.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.